Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon. We'll try to keep it, very open, and just feel free to, if you have any questions, just feel free to, stop me and ask. It's a small group, so we can have a more open sort of a conversation. But what I wanted to share with you was actually what I feel is of most importance, or of most of the bandwidth goes around thinking this, that I want to get the top placement on campus. So what do I have to do for it? And obviously there is no one secret sauce to this. Everybody has a different way of addressing this problem. Everybody has a different answer to this target. So I'll try and give you my journey. So what we discuss over the next half hour or so will be a lot of examples for from my journey, from journeys of my friends, who've been on campus, got good placements or didn't get good placements, and why. So I'll try to share a lot of examples, and feel free to ask any questions, as I said, towards the end, or at any point as well. So just very quickly, why did I choose this topic? Honestly, very simply, if we were talking about the insurance industry, how does insurance pricing happens, and what is the right health insurance to buy, and when should one buy a term insurance policy? I'm sure the number of people who've turned up will be even lesser than this. So I thought that knowing my audience is important, and there's a reason why I'm saying that. I'll come to it, but I feel that when you're on campus, largely we are on campus to get a job. That's if we cut out the gyan out of it, we are here to get the best job on campus. So let's say if BCG is the best job on campus, I'm Indore right now, or I remember in my times it was Deloitte SNO used to be the first recruiter on campus. So I really want that job, right? And there are probably 500 people, I'm not sure what the batch size now is, but there are a lot of people who want the same job. So in such a scenario, how do you what do you go about doing? What is right? What is wrong? There is no information available. There is no one guidebook which says what do you have to do. So let me just give you some of my ways of how I got it done. And just before I do that, just so that before you start asking कि भाई मेरे को कैसे पता कि क्या आंसर है, just I do have some experience on the placement side. So I was the placement coordinator for my batch. I got placed on the first company on campus, fortunately. I joined Deloitte SNO, worked there for about 4.5 years. And currently I'm working with Policy Bazaar, which is, while it's a large listed company now, but we are very much a startup company. So I'm working there as a chief business officer. So, and I do a lot of recruitment, as Jigar sir mentioned, while I've not come to campus, I do a lot of lateral hiring. We interview people from MBA campuses, from engineering campuses all the time. So I do have that experience, and I understand. I'll try to bring in a flavor of what is a recruiter thinking when they are looking to to hire, when they are on campus. They won't tell you, and you won't know hopefully yet. So hopefully you'll find value in this. So what I'll do is, over the next probably, next some time, I will talk about, what I think are some key insider tricks that you should think of when you look at what do you want to do when you go to an interview, or how do you prepare for an interview. So we'll talk about first things first, right? I think knowing your audience is very, very important. Now, honestly, none of this is something which, let's say, you don't know about. These are all very common. Sorry, there are people trying to join, so I'll admit them. Yeah. So none of this is, I would say something which is very rocket science or you don't know. But I think game hai, how do you apply it to your interview? Right. So let me try to bring an analogy here. Let's say you're a single guy on campus, or anywhere in the world, and you want to approach a girl, or vice versa. Uh, you would want to know what the girl likes, what the girl wants to talk about, what impression do you want to leave on that person, and ऐसी बात बनेगी, otherwise तो बात नहीं बनेगी, right? The same things actually apply to an interviewer as well. So I think very, very important that you know your audience, who is going to interview you, or who's going to, observe you during a placement process. So is the guy, and let me give examples. Now this will actually vary a lot by which process you are in, which company you are interviewing for, and also what stage of the process you are in. So for example, if you're, let's say, interviewing for BCG or Deloitte, are you being interviewed by somebody who's, let's say, a 1-2 year old campus recruit who's just come into the system and is probably shortlisting for a senior manager or a partner, or you're actually meeting a senior manager or a partner, right? The reason I say this is because the conversation can vary massively based on who you are speaking to, because different people want to hear different things. So for example, when you talk to a recent campus recruit who's just joined, let's say a couple of years back, and he's here to interview people, he or she probably wants to listen more about your campus experiences, because the person has come right from there, not very long back. So for example, if you were an alumni committee member, or you were a placement committee member, or you got the best internship during the intern process, or you got, let's say, you won the most prestigious award on campus, or you are a top grader in certain subjects, let's say, that will matter a lot to a 1-year-old campus recruit or a 2-year-old campus recruit. Whereas, let's say, if you are in your final rounds and you are talking to a partner who's interviewing you, honestly, these things won't matter to that guy. Probably what will matter more to that guy is because he or she will be observing you probably either on your technical skills, or on your attitude or your behavior, or how you're talking or how you're presenting yourself, or are you able to think on your feet. So the content really needs to change, and at that point the senior partner will actually want to probably hear something exciting from you, right? Like, let's say in my case, I was a national level table tennis player, so that will matter to him a lot more than, say, I did my internship at HSBC Bank, or I did some live project with some startup while I was on campus. So you have to know your interviewer and decide what do you want to tell who. So if, let's say, you're the same guy, but the way you speak, what you speak has to really change based on who you are speaking to. I think that is one very, very important part of knowing your audience and preparing accordingly. The second important thing is, and just staying on that for a bit, how do you know how do you know more about your interviewer? The easiest way out is, there's LinkedIn. You can just quickly check up the guy, understand what's his or her background. Maybe you can just read up a few posts and just see what the person is talking about, and maybe you can move in that direction. What does the person like, dislike? A lot of times alumni come for interviews, so you may want to even just quickly dig up the guy a bit and find out what, let's say, the more knowledgeable you seem, and the more it seems that you've done some homework, the better it is. Like, I'll give you a simple example. Yesterday I was interviewing somebody, and the guy had seen one of my podcasts that was done within our office. So the guy knew exactly how I joined Policy Bazaar, because I was speaking about that in that podcast. The point I'm trying to make is, suddenly the guy made a very lasting impression on me, because he had made an effort, and he had prepared for meeting me. So he said some of the things which I was actually quite surprised him knowing, but then he later told me, I was reading up about you. So I think doing that bit of background check, knowing what the other guy may want to listen, or at least being in that on the same level as what the other guy wants to listen, that is very, very important. The second important part is knowing how much time does the person have. And I'll give you some insider place commer, tricks here. A lot of times what happens is, the companies have already made their mind on the two people that they want to hire. I still remember this happened, when we were coordinating placements for our batch. And then after that, they interviewed 10 more people, just looking for somebody who, let's say, shines out and comes up with something very extraordinary during an interview. Now, knowing that is very important, because imagine if you are the first guy going and interviewing, then you have all the time. You probably get those 20-30 minutes, and you can take your time, build up your story, and build up your interview. Whereas, let's say, if most likely you're going to get only 10 minutes, then you want to say the top things in your profile and the top things that you want to say upfront, so that you make that lasting impression and you disturb that balance which, let's say, the recruiter has already created. I remember this happened at Standard Chartered in during our placement process. From the first 5 people they interviewed, they'd already shortlisted 2 guys. Then they met the next 10 people for only 5 minutes each, because they didn't want to disappoint people, because people were already shortlisted and waiting in a room. But they said, we have already made up our mind, and only if we find somebody extraordinary is when we will interview, is when we will consider. So at that point, you just have only 5 minutes. You have to bring your elevator pitch out at that point and try and basically say the best thing. Otherwise, yeah, they don't have time for you. So very important to know how much time does the person have when they are interviewing to you. The third thing, and this is more about the profile maybe and a bit about the person, if you can find out, is what exactly are they looking for. So, and this varies a lot by organizations, for example. So let's say if you're interviewing for a consulting firm, then they look for smooth talkers because that is your job. You have to go in front of a client and be able to present properly. So talking nicely, confidently coming out in front of the audience is very, very important. Now, let's say if you are looking at an analyst role at, let's say, an investment banking firm, or a research firm, there suddenly, probably more than being a smooth talker, being brainy really helps. So they would actually look at your content a lot more. Versus, let's say, if you are interviewing, say, for example, for a technology firm for a program manager role, there you have to talk probably more about your specific past experience because that's what they are looking for. So if you have a technical program manager experience, that will really be beneficial if, let's say, you're interviewing at Google for a program manager role. Versus if you are, interviewing, let's say, in some general management role, then probably they'll want somebody who's a good hustler and who can talk around and get things done. So I think knowing what the audience wants in terms of what they want to take out of you as a person is also very, very important because again, and you may have all these three things within you, right? So a smooth talker will also be brainy and may also have specific experience, but it's important that you showcase that skill to the right guy. So again, knowing your audience becomes very, very important. I'll move to the next point. If anybody has any questions, just feel free to ask. I think the second point, and I'm sure you hear this all the time, but this is true not just for campus interviews. In fact, all of what we're talking about right now is not just true for campus interviews, but it's true largely for life. Whenever you interview anywhere in the world at any point in your career, all of these things hold absolutely true, and they will come in handy. In fact, not just in interviews. When you're, let's say, pitching for a business or a service that you're trying to sell, even there these things come in handy. So the second point is having your story ready. I think that is very, very important. So I'll tell you what my story was, and the story would, I can try and make different stories based on what I want to do. But my story was very, very clear. When I interviewed Deloitte, I said that I always wanted to do consulting. I never went to engineering or technology because that was totally not my area. But I realized that consulting brings a lot of sort of challenges, and that's what I wanted to do. To make it more real, I joined a startup after graduation. So I worked in an early stage startup for a year. When I joined IIM Indore, I took to Placecom because I wanted to get a lot of hustling experience, which was an experience which was full of uncertainty. So I became a Placecomer. I did that for 2 years and ensured that I got a lot of exposure in terms of talking to companies, in terms of managing the batch, in terms of managing processes, being open to uncertainty. I was a national level sportsman, so I have it in me when it comes to challenges. I have the spirit when it comes to problems in front of me. And I was always very clear what I don't want to do. So I had done a couple of projects, one in FMCG. I had done my internship with HSBC Bank, which was so I was very clear that this is what I don't want to do, which is why I tried those things and I said that this does not make sense. So all through these last 2 years, I've been primarily working on getting the consulting job, and that's what I want to do. I think if you have a compelling story, I don't know if this sounded compelling or not, but it worked for me. So if you have a compelling story when you go to your interview, that really matters a lot. Because see, you have to shine away from the rest of the crowd, and majority of the crowd will probably be engineering plus 2 3 years of, at least that's how it was at my time. I know it has changed a bit, but I don't know how much. But majority of the crowd is engineering plus coding experience. At least 30 40 50% people are like that. So how do you shine out and say that that's my story and that's why I'm the right guy for this job? I think having this story is very, very important. Obviously, you cannot change your graduation degree or you cannot change your work experience because now you are here. But building it through experiences like life projects, like internships. You guys do a lot more now than what we used to do. So I think doing all of that will really help. You could even talk about stuff that you've been researching on, analyzing if you're doing some virtual internship or something like that. Or maybe you've done some courses. That's another way. That's a quick, easy way now because now courses are online, so you can quickly build up a profile as well. But having a story for the role that you're going for is very, very important. Ideally, you don't want a story which is the same for all the companies. So a bank will have a very different story versus a company versus an IT company versus a startup. So having that story is very, very important. I think one must clearly define what your story is, and then basis that, just steer the conversation during the interview accordingly. Moving on, the third point, and we spoke about it briefly, is how do you shine away from the crowd? So I think, and suddenly, see, all said and done, we make great friends at an MBA campus, but also they are the people we are competing with for the top job. The top company is probably going to hire five people, and there are probably 500 people around you who all you are going to compete with as well. So I think very, very important to also know your batch and figure out why you are different and have that answer ready during your interview. You may not be asked this question, but you have to showcase this that this is why I am the right guy and I am so different from everybody else who's also present and in contention. So simple things, right? The basics are obviously you know all of these, right? So grades, for example, if you have the top grades on campus, it obviously helps because you honestly a lot of times it's very tough for companies to figure out who's a good guy or a bad guy quickly in an interview or a group discussion. So grades becomes a very safe proxy when it comes to identifying the good guys or the bad guys. So obviously grades help, but again, either you have it or you don't have it. So what next? So the other important thing is again your background. Again, you may have it or not have it, but let's say if you're not the typical background. Let's say if you've done, let's say, mathematics honors or psychology or something, or you have extensive experience in some specific domain. All of those really help because they will help you outshine from the rest of the 30-40 people who are, let's say, sitting in that company's process. If you've done some nice internship, let's say, or you've done a big brand internship, like in my case, I interned at HSBC Bank. It was the first bank that used to come on campus. So that also gives a certain flavor that you were the guy who was also chosen when internships were going on. So that gives some credibility. Life projects is actually one of the ways where you can mold your profile while you're on campus. A lot of people I understand now do live projects. Try and do live projects across the board as much as possible, and try and do in the industries that let's say you are that let's say you are targeting. So let's say if you're targeting FMCG, then it makes a lot of sense for you to try and work with an FMCG company where, let's say, you've done some research work for them or some sales or a feedback kind of a role for them. I think that will be really good. If, let's say, your research, if you are aiming for a consulting company, then you must try and do live projects, for consulting companies or research firms, and get that exposure. Because honestly, when if I come to campus, live project is one of the things that gets spoken about a lot, or it interests us a lot, because otherwise things are very similar across the board. Backgrounds are similar, grades are similar, internships are similar. So I think live projects is one extremely important, I would say, area that can be picked up for you to mold your profile and build it up in a way that that it can complete your story very nicely. The last thing actually, which also helps to a certain extent, is campus awards. So by this, what I mean is, if there are events that happen on our campus or on other campuses, it really helps, to have these awards in your profile, because it shows that you are different from others. You made an effort, you tried, and you're competitive in nature, which is exactly what you need. Once you leave an MBA and join a corporate. So I think campus awards is again one of those things which really helps when it comes to shining out from the rest of your friends, when it comes to sitting through an interview process. So I think overall the message on this slide is, just try and answer through your resume and eventually in an interview why you are different from the rest of the batch. Like, for example, again, I'll take some stories from my batch. I remember, for me, it was very clear that, one, I was a place commer and there were only 10 of them. So that was one thing which stood me out. I was the only non-engineer amongst all of them. So that further stood me out. And then I was the only guy who had some startup experience. So these three things just totally stood out, which ensured that I got a shortlist every time. So knowing this part is extremely important. That why are you different from others? And to break that clutter will actually help you get a shortlist and eventually crack the interview. Okay, moving forward, I think one very important thing that we typically hear is that my strength is, let's say, my work experience, and this didn't get asked in the interview, or my strength was my life projects, let's say, and those didn't get asked in the interview at all. So I think see, honestly, what is very, very important is you have to steer the interview in that direction. That's again a very, very important thing when it comes to campus interviews, because see, when you're interviewing offline, a lot of you, I'm sure, have past experience, and you would have interviewed, laterally in various companies in the past. The campus interview experience is a very hurried process for the recruiters also. बहुत जल्दी जल्दी हो रहा होता है, and you are in a hurry to figure out कि यार इसको हम close करें, नहीं तो कोई और ना ले जाए. So it's a very, very hurried process. So people don't really have like an hour to listen to you in most cases. So in that case, they don't have a script as well, because they're interviewing people back to back. So very, very important that you take charge of the conversation and try and steer the interview in the direction you want to steer it to. Like, I still remember my entire Deloitte final interview was on my placement experience. You know, all the questions asked were basically around, the batch size had gone from 240 to 450. How did you manage the batch? What were the challenges you faced? That was exactly right up my alley, right? That's exactly what I wanted to talk about. But the important point is, how do you get there? The only way to get there is by steering the interview in that direction yourself. Because otherwise, the interviewer may ask you anything out of the blue, and then you may not have, you may actually be left fiddling for answers. Because अब अगर, let's say, you are a marketing guy and the interviewer is a finance guy, and the guy starts asking you questions about the stock market, then you will be in a fix, right? And you may not sound that smart or as smart as you are. So I think very, very important that you steer the interview in the direction. You can talk about your work experience. Let's say if you have extensive work experience, or work experience which is different and very impressive, you must talk about it. And specifically, if it is relevant to, let's say, the conversation that's going to happen, then even more the reason. Try and steer the interview in that direction. If, let's say, your internship was good, you must talk about it as well. If you had a good experience, then definitely talk about it. Talk about the project you did, the role you had, the people you worked with, your learnings, your failures, etc. All of that. I think that is very, very good. Similarly, if, let's say, you should talk about your campus experiences. If, let's say, you're the alumni committee member or the cultural committee member, or any of those, right? Do talk about it. Try and steer the direction of the interview in that, towards that, and say that, why alumni committee was a great experience and a great challenge for me. And similarly, we spoke about live projects. So, talk about projects that you've done, specifically if they are contextual to the interview that you're doing, then the interviewer wants to listen to that. But you'll have to bring that up. It may not every time happen that the interviewer brings that up. So that's again a very, very important point. Steer the interview towards your strengths or what you want to talk about. I think lastly, these are some points that I typically, like to follow in life in general, not just, in an interview, but I feel that, it's important that we end with this. So one, I think it is very, very important, that you have to come across as a nice person. Nobody likes people with a lot of attitude. Nobody likes people who have airs about themselves. So I think in general, what works best is don't have fancy language neither on your profile, neither when you're speaking. Try to speak simple, be confident, stay humble, stay grounded. But at the same time, don't sound overconfident. Like, I'll give you an example. This happened yesterday. I was interviewing this guy, we just spoke about. So the guy has about 4 years of experience, a very broken experience also. He's worked in 3 companies over 4 years. And during the interview, he said, I'm also consulting some startups on their corporate strategy. Now, honestly, a guy who's just spent 4 years out of after graduation, he was a sharp guy, but I don't think I don't think any startup will want his advisory right now, because he has to first achieve something in his life before you go and start advising companies on corporates. Now, most likely, what he would have been doing is he would probably been helping some friends in making some decks, or doing some research or something like that. But the moment you say something as fancy as, I am consulting a few startups, honestly, that just threw me off, because it means that somewhere, you're trying to be not trying to not be not oh, sorry trying to be who you are not, because you're trying to be some fancy guy, who can advise startups, but actually Actually, boss, you are like, you just 3, 4 years into your career and you have to figure your career out first before you start advising anybody else. It obviously sounds very fancy, right? I'm consulting startups, but again, there's no context, right? So that came across, it just threw me off in that conversation, and eventually we didn't take him. So I think very important that, no fancy language as much as possible. Try to be humble, grounded, and come across as a nicer person. Somebody who's worked hard, who's worked hard across the years, and with that, you have that knowledge and confidence. And very, very important, I think knowing your resume well enough is very, very important. You know, uh, it is a blunder if you cannot answer what you have written on your resume. This has happened to the best of people. It happened to me also once, where I wrote something about I think it was a project only, but I remember I used to be a part of this organization called Share on campus, and we did a project over there, which I'd done in the first year and then I'd forgotten, and I genuinely didn't remember much, but I wrote it because it was looking nice, and then I fumbled during the interview process during the internship. So I think very, very important that whatever you've written on your resume, you must know it. You can't really fumble on that part because that's something that you've said about yourself. So all in all, I think this coming across as a nice person is very important because people like to work with people who have no attitude, who are humble, grounded, down to earth, who are hardworking people, who are diligent, sincere, but who are also nice people to talk to. You don't want arrogant people talking, roaming around in an office. So I think that is also a very, very important part. So always come across as a nice person, dress nicely, speak respectfully, etc. I'm sure again these are ground rules, but at times in the hustle bustle and the nervousness of a campus interview process, these things do get missed out. So that's actually what I had. I'll just unshare my screen now. So I just wanted to sort of put these pointers in front of you. I don't know if these are helpful or not. It sounds like honestly quite a monologue. टफ होता है इसमें ना, in a forum like this to ask questions because everybody is there. So feel free here. I'm on LinkedIn and all, or probably my details can be circulated, my email ID and all. If anybody has any questions, just feel free to ask. Happy to help around placements or in general in life. I owe a lot to I am Indore. So if there's anything that I can do to help any of you, will absolutely love it.
Sure. While we are waiting some question, I have a question of myself. So
Sure.
you graduated in 2011, and it's been quite a year since then. So, from an recruiter's perspective, how has the market changed since 2011?
It hasn't changed, to be honest. The basics remain the same. We still need, see, so we still need the same kind of people, right? The qualities don't really change, let's say, when I'm saying from a recruiter angle. So the qualities are exactly the same. You want to hire a person who's hardworking, who's different, who's talented, who has some experience. So it hasn't really changed. Honestly, business doesn't change as much. Times change. Like for example, at that point probably there was no talk of chat GPT and AI and all, but now there's a lot of talk about that. But uh, but the basic tenets of the people don't, of people doesn't change. You still need smart people, who are logical, who can think clearly, who can answer questions, who are confident. So that remains exactly the same. Honestly, I don't think anything changes here. If you are at an MBA campus, interviewing for a top job, it is exactly how it was 10, 15 years back as well. It's not very different. Like, for example, we also hire a lot of very young folks, people who've just graduated, or let's say 1 to 2 years from campus. The assessment criteria is exactly the same as it is for people who are 10 years into MBA as well. So it's exactly the same. It isn't very different at all.
Got it. So another small thing that I noticed with the recruiters was that they complained of having very homogeneous CVs for the students. So there have been very little scope of differentiation. So given the scarcity of time during MBA, what can one do in 2 years of MBA to differentiate themselves from the crowd?
See, a lot of things, right? As we spoke about. So like live projects is a great example. That is something that you do on campus. You can do projects in the direction of. See, honestly, so I'll tell you my experience. When I was on campus, you don't have to. I don't think you have all the day to just studying, right? You have your classes for half the day, and then largely you have the rest of the half to yourself, right? So people do live projects, in companies that, a lot of people reach out to alumni also for stuff like this, right? So a lot of people do these live projects. That is one very, very easy way of building differentiation. So let's say if there are two people who've worked for 3 years at TCS and who are now here, one has, let's say, done a couple of projects and one hasn't done anything. That's a differentiation. Second, I think one should always try and go for positions of responsibilities on campus. That is one thing which really makes a difference, I feel, because those are really valued positions. And see, all of the people who are coming to interview are also typically MBA graduates. So they understand, that if a person is an alumni committee member or an academic affairs member or a placecom member, they are the people, they are the hardworking people in a batch. So it really makes a difference. The third thing is obviously grades, right? As I said, if you have grades, then that differentiates you automatically. Specifically, if you're going into a consulting or a banking kind of job and you're, let's say, the batch top 10, then automatically you get a shortlist. Typically, that shortlist will automatically come. So that's the other thing that you can, do to differentiate. The last thing I'll add is, it's very easy now. ये हमारे time पे नहीं था, but now it's very, very easy to do courses. So for example, you could do courses on Coursera or any of these online platforms related to let's say, the discussion that, that's happening. Like, so I'll give you a simple example, right? How many people today, I don't know about the current course, but if, let's say, how many people in the batch today have advanced knowledge about, about ChatGPT and how it can, it can help in business, or you can use all the tools that are built on top of ChatGPT. Very few people, I would imagine. So, but if you are one of that guy, if who sort of has learnt it, and you don't have to go to any classes also, right? It's an online course that one can do and learn. Then that differentiates you, and I can guarantee if something like that is written on your resume, the recruiter will want to talk about it. And the moment you impress the recruiter, with your knowledge of that course or that whatever learning you've had, that is what seals the deal, right? It just shows that you've taken the effort and you're different from the rest. So that is, there are three, four easy ways, which you can do to build up your profile. There are a couple of questions I received on the chat window. So how can one work upon the story he tells, or communication skills in general? So I think, see, story we just spoke about. We spoke about very much the same thing. Story is all about, so let's build it up, right? So this is from Athang. Athang, can you unmute yourself? Let's try to do this right away, live. I'll try and see if, we can come up with some story. Knowing your constraints and then building the story around it through various stuff, right? Various stuff that you can do is what is needed, right? So try and do a live project, or try and do some workshops, or do a course online, or do an internship, or do a project, and all of these will eventually tie up into your story. So I think that part is something that one has to work on. There's another question I wanted to ask: how can we decide for the field in which we can build our profile? As currently said, we are told that being a fresher, both marketing and finance. So, good question, Krishna. Honestly, this is a question which is not just for freshers, but for everybody. Nobody is sure which field to go for, and that is something that you only figure out over time. I'll be very honest. On campus, if I had not gotten through Deloitte, I would have gotten through probably JP Morgan, which was the next bank. So actually nobody is clear even on the day of placement. So it's you just keep all your options open and try to get the best possible job. But what I can tell you is that you have to build your profiles accordingly. So if you're a fresher, then try and build a different profile to suit a marketing job and to suit a finance job. Like, probably if let's say you have interest in finance, probably you should at least have qualified for CFA level 1, by the time your final placements happen. CFA level 1 is fairly simple. So you should do that, and that will ensure that, that shows that, you've taken some effort and you're learning. Or some people do FRM, or I don't know if there are any newer courses around that. Probably, you should try and do live projects in marketing and finance both. So do a live project for marketing and do a live project for finance, so that when you sit in either of the interviews, you talk about both. Now there are two kinds of people, typically in a batch. There would be people who are very clear in their life on what they want to do. That I want to do marketing, or I want to do finance, I want to do consulting. But honestly, 90% of the people are not clear. On the day of the job, they are not clear what if there is a specific stream I want to go for. Most people go for whoever pays more, you know. So whoever, whichever are the top paying jobs, people try and apply to all of them. So have a good profile for marketing and have a good profile for finance. It's absolutely okay. And yeah, that's how it is, you know, that's how life is. It has nothing to do with you being a fresher. People of 2 years and 3 years experience, leave that, you know, somebody like I have almost 15 years of experience now. Even I'm not clear what I want to do in life, you know, as I go ahead. So it's something that, you know, everybody figures out and you're prepared for it and you sort of move on. Okay, any more questions?
I don't think we have any more questions for now. We will be floating your details so that students can reach out to you personally. So thank you, sir, for engaging talk. As we come to the end of the 38th alumni talk of the series, I would like to take this opportunity to thank our chair alumni Professor Praveen Paningrai and team alumni office under the guidance of Jigar sir for facilitating the talk series, as well as their constant support to the alumni committee team. This talk will be uploaded on the institute website and YouTube channel for wider audience. Thank you all for joining us, and thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. All the best, everybody.